when evaluating this policy change. We have to compare, in the long run, what's going to be better. The affirmative team's case, which will possibly mitigate some of the problem, or the negative team's counterplan, which is the cleanest source of energy available. In this speech, we're going to be dividing things up into 3 voting issues, trying to boil down and weigh the arguments. The first voting issue will be lives saved, look at that analysis. The second one will be that of the economy, and the third one will be that of solvency. Let's begin with the lives saved point. The overall thing that was completely dropped by the last speaker is that air emission still kills after their plan is passed. Now they reduce it some, about by half, but air pollution still kills. I made this analysis in my 2NC talking about how air pollution will continue to kill if you vote for the affirmative team. This was not responded to and cannot be responded to in the next speech because that will be the last speech of the round and I will not have a chance to respond to it. Now the next point was about water pollution, and really they did drop a lot of my analysis on this point. But the first thing they did respond to is, well, Lisa Jackson said we're going to speed it up. Yes, she sped it up in July. We still haven't found anything. We still haven't enacted any regulations. Also, it did say that that before Lisa Jackson sped it up, the plan was to do 3 years of studying the problem. That's exactly what the evidence said. Now, that's what Lisa Jackson ignored. She said, we're not going to study the problem for 3 years. Instead, we're going to go ahead and act right now. Now, the next point they said was, well, you never read any kind of examples or anything like that of where we actually have increased water pollution. That is completely wrong. That's what I talked about in my 2NC. I read you an example of the Allegheny Energy Project. So that is a specific example, and they did drop their example of New York in the last speech. The second thing that they also did not respond to is the fact that there's a 2,000 time increased risk of cancer if you vote for the affirmative team. A 2,000 time increase in a risk of cancer. That was not responded to. They said you didn't read any numbers. I read a specific number saying 2,000 times. Their last response was, well, we're going to hold you to the same standard. You actually have to look at overall, is this happening everywhere? Let's read some evidence from the New York Times saying, in Georgia, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, North Carolina, Ohio, Wisconsin, and elsewhere, power plants have dumped other chemicals at dangerous concentrations. This is a nationwide problem, not just one example, a nationwide problem. We fulfill the burden of proof here, and we actually do outweigh the affirmative team's plan. There is no solvency. Why? Because when you vote for the affirmative team's case, maybe you don't breathe in something that'll kill you, you'll drink something that kills you. Let's move down to the next point here, this of particulate matter, or basically the coal mining issue. They basically responded by saying, yes, it will increase particulate matter. We agree that coal mining does increase particulate matter. We just don't know by how much. And this is our basic point, though, is they're staying with something that increases particulate matter, especially when opposed to the counterplan. Why is this important? The whole basis of their case is to remove particulate matter. If we go to the counterplan, we solve for the particulate matter issue. Now let's move down to the last point, that of global warming. And their only response here, whatsoever is, well, nuclear contributes as well. That's not true. My partner did read evidence saying it is the lowest emitter out there. So with the basic point of global warming, though, it was impacting the economy. And then it said that we would lose 20% of our GDP. The impact comes from The Guardian, quoting the IPCC, saying that the expected increase in extreme weather with the association of problems and expensive problems of agricultural failure, water scarcity, disease, and mass migration meant that global warming could swallow up to 20% of the world's GDP. Now, also what we talk about is that when you look at it, coal is a major CO2 producer, which is a major factor in global warming. This was not responded to. They have agreed to the point that global warming will hurt if it happens, but that coal actually hurts more. And this completely outweighs all of their economic disadvantages against our counterplan. 20% of the world's GDP completely outweighs all their 6 million jobs points, all the evidence they've read up to this point. The second thing we need to look at under the economy is long-term versus short-term. Long-term energy prices versus short-term energy prices. Long-term, they will go down. Why? Because they're stable prices. Nuclear doesn't fluctuate with supply and demand because it's a stable energy source. They basically said, well, you didn't refute this. We did respond by saying overall it will go down. The third voting issue is that of solvency. The first point is the 1AC solvency. They have completely dropped the point that not all plants can switch over to grandfather because they do not have the technology available. That's an important point in the round, is they have completely dropped this point. Next, on the counter plan, they completely also did not respond to the fact that the status quo is expanding their options available that my partner talked about, and we can meet the need in the future. Nuclear power is a way to do it. My partner read advocacy saying it can replace coal. I would urge you to replace coal with something that's clean, something that doesn't kill. I'd urge you to adopt nuclear power. Thank you.